Hey, what's going on, guys? So, I wanted to make a review of my most anticipated album of the year, because it's my favorite band, the Gazette. Now, I've been into Jrock for a few years now, 3 or 4, maybe going on 5. I can easily say the Gazette is my favorite band, not just Jrock, but of all music. I think they're a very talented band. I think when it comes to a rock band, they're just few and far between, like the Gazette. A lot of them just don't. I feel like the Gazette consists of 5 members. Each member really understands their instrument and really understands how to produce the best quality that they can from their instrument. They just can't ever seem to do wrong. And holy crap, this album. Sorry for slamming it down, but damn, this album does not disappoint. Does not disappoint at all. They advertised this album to be the Dark Age, and they changed their look to be more darker, and holy crap, this is their darkest album yet. Probably before this, their darkest album was Dim. Dim was a great album, and it was very dark. And some comparisons can be made, but not really. It can be compared because both of them were the Gazette's. Dogma and Dim are Gazette's hardest, darkest albums, but Dim was not anywhere near as hard or dark as this one. They go to new extremes. They change their sound in this album. First off, if any Gazette fan knows, that the majority of their fans are women, and a lot of the female fans, they do like the harder sounding songs and everything, but they're there for, a lot of them there for how cute they look and, their ballads. It's not the case in this one. They aren't trying to look cute for this album, and there aren't really any ballads on this album. I mean, there are some songs that kind of can come off as ballady, but there's not a single song on this album, on this 14-track album, that can be called a ballad, where it's slow all the way through, and it's not a hard hitting sound throughout the whole thing. The last song, Ominous, let me bring it up real quick. Ominous. That's the closest thing to a ballad. They kind of pulled off what they did in their last album of ending it on a not so hard and not so mellow track. Ominous is that. It's not really hard. There's not really growling or anything like that. But it's not a ballad at the same time. The guitars are too hard. The message is a little like this, I've read some things about this album now. This album covers things like depression, suicide, and, just a lot of negative things. And, sadly, I haven't gotten a chance to read the lyrics to any of the songs yet, but it's definitely an angry album. And a lot of energy comes through this whole entire album. My favorite song, and ironically called Rage, is probably their fastest, like, most hard-hitting song. Yeah, they kill it. I have to give it, as much as credit will be given to Rookie for the different things that he does with his vocals, and I'll talk about that in a second, I have to give a lot of credit to Kai, the drummer. Holy crap. First off, Kai is my favorite drummer. He can do things and constantly keep up rhythms, and he's an amazing drummer who just really understands how to keep up a good drum line and everything. And songs like Rage, it's just like, he's constantly going fast, he's constantly keeping up, and it's just like, it's amazing the amount of the drumming that he does in this album. It's really hard hitting. With that being said, they are changing their styles. There's not a lot of guitar, I believe there's only one guitar solo in this album. And Rada doesn't do much with the bass and stuff. They all create a hard-hitting sound. Rather than going out, it's just like, there is one song with a drum solo too, and it's nothing too complicated. And that's the thing with this album. Nothing about this album is overly complicated. And if there was to be any complication given, it would be to Rookie and, what he does with his vocals. But the rest of the band just they stay back, they create a consistent, well, that's not true for some of the songs, but they create a constant, hard, tone for this whole album. And there are songs like, probably the most talked about song on this album is going to be, is it Deux or Deus or Deux? It's Deux. It's the 12th track on the album. It's like Deus? Deus, Deux, and like I don't really know how to pronounce that in this correct form, but this song is so different from anything the Gazette have ever made. It's ridiculous because it starts off with this techie, electronical, fast sound. You think, oh shit, it's about to go down, and then it goes into like a slow but hard sounding guitar riff, and it's a very slow but it's hard sounding. Definitely a low drop tuning that they're using. And then it stops and there's a piano playing in the background and Ruki singing, and it's the typical Ruki sounding voice. And then the guitars cut in between, the riffs, and the guitars sound exactly like how they do on their song Red. So if you've heard the song Red, you'll hear a lot of that in the song. And it cuts to chorus and riff again, and then it's just throughout the song, and then that electrical part comes back one more time. It's a weird, inconsistent melody, because it's like, oh shit's about to go down, then it's slow hard, and then it's just slow, and then it's kind of slow hard, and it goes back and forth. It sounds good, but then the track ends. But the thing is, it doesn't actually end. They take a little break. You think the track ends because it's like the 3-minute 40-second mark, somewhere around there, and this track just explodes. Holy shit. When I said that Ruki and his vocals changed, he definitely stepped it up and made it more complicated, and then just their whole sound changed. This is the song, especially at the end of the song, where it really comes through. Because they do all that stuff in the beginning, and then at the 3-minute 40-second mark after that, they take a break, it's silent, Kai hits the drum one time, and then it just breaks down into this really heavy, really fast. Ruki growls like he's never growled before in this album. And it's not just in Deus that he does this, or Deux, he does this. It's like Rage and Dogma. He growls. He pulls something out that he's never pulled out before. It makes me wonder, is he pissed off about something? I believe when Dim came out, that they were kind of going through a bad time. And they were talking about breaking up, and thankfully it didn't happen. They just took a little bit of a break. So I don't know if things are going on with the Gazette, but this album is very angry. But at the same time, it turns out to be their best album, and it's the most energetic. It is, even the slow-paced songs are fucking heavy and amazing. And Ruki just growls like he never growls before. If I can make a comparison, if I actually want to talk about his vocals for a second, if I can make a comparison to what he does in this album, it's like, yes, there are a lot of times where he sings like he always has sang, and it's amazing because he's a smoker. I don't know how he can sing the way he does, but he has an amazing voice just singing. So the growling, at the end of Deux, that whole hard-hitting part where he's growling, and the band is going crazy, and then Kai's going crazy with the drums, and it's getting faster and faster. The style reminds me of Duran Gray, and what Duran Gray has become. Not the old Duran Gray in the early millennium. I'm talking what Duran Gray has become now, and how Kyo makes his voice sound. Not necessarily with the pig noises, but Ruki does some growling, and then it also reminds me, because he also sometimes like growls and sings at the same time, and it reminds me of how Hazuki from Lynch, the lead singer of the band Lynch, how he sings. And I would say Dogma sounds a lot like what Lynch has been sounding like the past couple of years. And that's a great thing. They are amazing, and they've been killing it. There's a lot of that. So this album's kind of like a combination of GazettE, Duran Gray, and Lynch. If you're into that hard-hitting sound, this is exactly the album for you. Oh my god, it kicks ass. But at the same time, I want to mention, this album, they took a little break for this, because they've been making albums and music non-stop for like the past 3 years. And then after Beautiful Deformity, they took a break, and they came back and made this album. They took a break for a year, which is not to be said for a lot of American bands who need to take at least a 2-year break in between albums. But these guys came back harder and more amazing than they've ever come back before. And it reminds me of how the band Gorugamesh came back. Gorugamesh came back after making a horrible album that not a lot of their fans liked. And with good reason. They changed their sound. They went more poppy, not hardcore at all. And then they took a break, and they came back with their best album yet. And then like Ruki here in this album, Satoshi, the lead singer of Gilgamesh, growls like he's never growled before. And they come back harder and more amazing, and that's what I feel like the Gazette has done here. They didn't need to do this. They're still selling a lot. They're still the most popular band. They're still like doing amazing, but they changed their sound, and it makes me worry too. It's like they must be angry about something. They went completely dark and heavy and hard on this album, and it does not disappoint. Now, if I have to say anything bad about this album, and maybe criticize because this isn't technically bad, negative things to say, but this album is just too damn good. And there's a reason why this is a problem. It's because this album is the most hardest album I've ever owned, where it's hard for me to pinpoint. I've listened to it a few times already, and it's the most hardest album for me to pinpoint what is my favorite song. Usually after listening to a Gazette album, it's like, this is my favorite song. And honestly, it's usually because Rada steps up and does something different in that song, and every time he does that, I love it. But he doesn't really do that in this album, and the whole band consistently plays a hard tone, and they kill it with every track. Every track is too good, and it's hard for me to say, this song's better than the others. And because they're all fucking good. And now the first track, Nihil, is just a opening track. That's something when they go out on the stage, when they do their lives, this is what's going to be played out as the band's coming out. And like typical Gazette fashion, because Ruki's really into electronic and dubstep, it's an electronic dubstep song. It's just a minute and a half. So obviously that's not going on my MP3 player. But, yeah, they just killed it with this album. It's definitely album of the year in terms of hard rock and metal. And I feel like this album is for people who are like, Gazette are not anywhere near as hard as Nocturnal Bloodlust or Duran Gray or whatever. They came back and just, I feel like maybe they saw some of those memes on the internet that people have made, and that's why they made this album, to show that they can step up and be with those hard-hitting rock bands. And this album deserves the attention I hope it gets and the praise I hope it gets. Apparently it's already doing well in the charts. And this also leads me to the other bad point about this album. And this one's an actual legit one that I have, because I live in America, United States of America. I live in Florida, and it's so weird how Japan does things with their music, with their forms of entertainment, and how selective they are. So here's the thing. Living in America, you cannot buy this album right now. The only way you can buy this album is through either eBay, people selling it from Taiwan, or the CD Japan site, which shipping is crazy expensive. I will always advertise it here because it's only one of the few ways to actually legitimately buy an album, but I never buy from there because their shipping is ridiculous. And they charge it like their CD prices are ridiculous. And then there's JPU Records, which officially deals with Gazette merchandise for people across the sea, for Europe and for America too. But they're mainly for Europe. But you can, if you're from America, you can buy their European goods. And that's where I bought the CD from. They are selling the European version of the album, although I don't know when it's coming out. I don't know when it's going to be shipped to me. But you can get this album on European iTunes and Japan, I believe, but nothing for America. And that's fucked up. The fact that America gets nothing about this album, we have to either go on the internet and download it, pay absolutely ridiculous shipping prices in order to get the album. So of course we're going to go on the internet and download this album, or we can go to the JPU Records, and it costs 13 something pounds or whatever, but I calculate, and apparently it cost me $35 just for this album. And that's after shipping and handling. That's the cheapest, you know? It's just, that's the bad thing with this album, how inconvenient it is to get. And that's not fair to a lot of people across the world who would love to have this album. I know they have a lot of fans in America. I know they have a lot of fans in South America. Especially South America. I don't know how they're getting it, to be perfectly honest, but how inconvenient this album is. And it makes no sense because their last album you could get on Amazon. I ordered their last album, Beautiful Deformity, and, if I'm not mistaken, that one before that, I think some of the albums you can order from Amazon. They ship it. Their last album on release day, you could have ordered from Amazon. This one, there was no pre-order. There was no ordering at all. The only people selling it on Amazon now are people who have already got the album and are selling it at extended prices. It's ridiculous. It's not how it should be. This album should be sold worldwide, at least on iTunes. It makes no sense why America can't get this at least in MP3 format. If you don't want people to pirate your music, then don't restrict the music. It makes no sense. But that's really the bad thing. So with that, the fact that how inconvenient it is to get this album, this great album, and the fact that this album is so damn good, it's hard to pinpoint what song's better than the other and just be accepting of the fact that all the songs are good and nothing is truly amazing and stands out. It's just all the songs are good. So with those two things, I would have to say this album, hands down, is my favorite album of the year for sure, and I give it a 9 out of 10. They killed it. They came back after over a year or 2 years around of just taking a break and touring, and they changed their look. They changed their sound. Rookie pulls these growling sounds out of nowhere, and the whole band just kills it with their consistent, hard-hitting tone throughout the whole entire album. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the review. Let me know if you have got the album and what you think of it, because it is amazing. I don't see any Gazette fan being disappointed with this album unless you wanted more ballads and you wanted the cutesy look. If you wanted that, oh god, yes, you're going to be disappointed. If you wanted a harder sound from them, then this is exactly the album you've been waiting for. And I personally cannot wait to see a live DVD of them playing all these songs. It's going to be amazing. Alright everybody, have a good night.